The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, a new report from German bank Berenberg said it is quite possible that the SEC will prepare alternative arguments to justify continued rejections of spot Bitcoin ETF applications based on concerns about the spot Bitcoin market. Joining us now is Perkins Coie Partner and former SEC enforcement lawyer Keith Miller. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, let's talk about this report, the Grayscale developments. What concerns do you think the SEC is going to have moving forward? They, of course, have 45 days to review the judge's findings here. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's been a bad 2 months for the SEC. First, you had in July, you had the D.C. Circuit in a case CBOE versus the SEC. The D.C. Circuit Court found that the SEC acted arbitrary and capricious in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. Then on Tuesday, we saw that the D.C. Circuit Court once again found that the SEC acted arbitrary and capricious in violating the APA by failing to explain its reasoning in denying Grayscale's application. July also, we saw the Ripple case, right? Where the court held that secondary sales of XRP were not investment contracts. So the last 2 months have been, have shown these decisions in particular shown a crack in the SEC's crypto foundation. So I think the language that the court is using, I think, is important to look at. The SEC, the court is saying, failed to provide reasonable and coherent explanations. Okay, that's part of the APA is designed to allow people to redress agency issues, and that's exactly what they've done in at least these two most recent cases, right? July and August. So what happens from here, is a lot of guesswork, but I suspect that you're going to see more and more people attempting to try to get into the market. For example, you mentioned Elon Musk and trying to speculate on why is he trying to obtain money transmission license. You may be right. He wants to start slowly getting his ducks in a row.
Okay, so if I can just jump in right now, because I'm very glad, Keith, you said you used the word after a certain point, what we're doing is guesswork. But you come from a position which can possibly be called and should be called expert. So yours is an expert opinion. And yours is an expert opinion because you know how the SEC works. Yes, we can all accept the fact that this is perhaps an unprecedented situation, even within the SEC, because they've been enforcing like perhaps never before. What is happening inside the SEC right now in your best guesstimate?
Yeah. I would tell you that I'm sure people in the General Counsel's office and the commissioners, they're running around frantically, frankly. This is not a good decision for the SEC. Anytime a court says the agency has acted arbitrary and capricious, that's not something you are going to write a press release on. Notice there is no press release by the SEC, right? In almost all the cases where there's a win, there's a press release. There's no press release here. So there's a lot of communication going on. Interesting, the court not only remanded it back down, but also vacated the order. And that's important because I think this is a showing. If you look at the D.C. court's ruled in CBOE versus SEC last month, they simply remanded it back, right? They didn't vacate it. Here, the court vacated and remanded. I think that's a strong slap to the SEC saying, hey guys, you really have to treat people equally. That's what our equal protection clause is all about, right? You've seen these arguments come up, fair notice arguments in a lot of the crypto cases, right? And it's about transparency.
There's, of course, three things that could happen here. The SEC could appeal. They could find another reason to reject, like the Berenberg report is saying, or they could say, okay, we will do what the court is saying. We'll review the application and we will approve it. How likely do you think it is that they come up with another reason to reject this filing?
Again, the court is saying, look, you've got to treat people fairly and equally, right? And here they said there's no distinction. There's a distinction without any explanation of how you treat Bitcoin spot versus Bitcoin futures. And so I think the SEC is in a tough position. And I think they're going to have to seriously consider this. Now, a lot of this is politically driven. So who knows, ultimately, if they decide to appeal this decision, the likelihood, I think, is that it's more likely that the SEC negotiates somehow with Grayscale. That's my best guess.
What would that look like? A negotiation with Grayscale? What would that look like?
Well, I think, looking at the sharing agreements, surveillance agreements, and potentially trying to open them up a little bit more. That's a potential here. But again, the SEC is in a corner. It's a tough decision.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a tough decision to try to go to Grayscale and say, let's negotiate. The court, like I said, not only remanded it, but vacated it, basically saying, this is not good. Your explanations are not worthy.
So let me just ask you for a prediction then, because I know that it's a prediction in the world of guessing, but you're the closest we can get to experts in this space, given your SEC background. So in that context, I just want to understand, if you had to make a prediction right now, given the political landscape being what it is, what's that?
I think this is, like I said, a crack in the SEC's cryptocurrency foundation. I think you're going to see this crack become a crater, okay? And I think you're going to see more and more. You've got lots of applications that are pending, okay? And the SEC now is, if they're going to reject those applications, they have to somehow explain rationally why it's different than the two that they approved for Bitcoin futures.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, that's a great metaphor, the crack metaphor, but I still didn't get the answer, I think. I still want to know what you think about what is going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that the SEC is going to have to start approving these ETFs. And I think this is the opportunity for them to approve and move on. We see, look, I've been involved in the Bitcoin space since 2012. Okay, one of the first cases I represented was the first unregistered exchange. Okay, and then since then I've been swamped with lots and lots of enforcement cases dealing with exchanges, dealing with individuals, companies, so on and so forth. I've said over the last 4 to 5 years, okay, and I've been in this area for over 10, the 4 to 5 years, the only way this is going to get solved is through legislation, right? The courts, yes, the courts are going to pick off cases here and there. We're starting to see court wins. We didn't see court wins back 5 years ago. In the last 2 years, 3 years, you're seeing court wins. That means the courts are disagreeing with the SEC's philosophy on cryptocurrency, right? You see this struggle, the turf war between the SEC and CFTC. That is being highlighted. You see more legislation. And so I think this is a total crack in the foundation because you're seeing courts disagree with the SEC. You're seeing Congress saying, we've really got to do something. Who is the real regulator here? I don't think there's a dispute over regulating these assets. It's how to regulate them.
All right, and just before we go, we got to ask you about the Ripple case, another case where the SEC took a little bit of a blow. How would you compare the Ripple case to this Grayscale one?
Yeah, they're not necessarily. I mean, one is obviously dealing with is a cryptocurrency a security and when and how, and this obviously is completely different. We're talking about Bitcoin spot. The SEC has come out a long time ago and said, we don't believe Bitcoin is a security. But as the judge in the Ripple case found, cryptocurrencies, which are commodities, right, can be securities. It depends how you sell and package them. You package them in a pool or in a basket, like an ETF, it's a security. But in and of itself, them by themselves are not securities, right? So I think that's how they compare. The Ripple case, I would also say, is interesting because it stands, at least from my opinion, it stands for a proposition: once a security, not always a security. And this is what we saw from the speech from the former Director of Corporate Finance, Bill Hinman, where he came out and basically said that exact phrase: once a security, not always a security. You have to look at the facts and circumstances every time. And it could, these assets could be securities. It's how they're sold. It's how they're packaged. It's what you say about them. And just because you say, right, I'm going to make an investment, that it's an investment, doesn't mean it's a security. Every commodity is an investment. And that's one of the fallacies here is a lot of people say, well, but people are investing in this, so it's got to be a security. No, that's not true. You can invest in a lot of things. You can invest in diamonds. I think it's important to note that when the judge ruled in Ripple, the judge said, and there's some experts on this, right? People are investing. Why are they investing? They're investing in the market. Why do you invest in Bitcoin, right? You don't know anything about whether the market's going to. You're investing in a market. Same thing with XRP and all these other ones. Yes, you may be investing per se. I hope it goes up, but you're doing so because the market, not because some individual or entity is going to give you a dividend or give you a piece of the action.
Okay. Final question for you. There's obviously experts like you, the journalists like us. We all kind of review what happens after a court order like that one. But there are also these, experts, institutional experts like Bernstein, the German bank Berenberg. Bernstein said in a research report that Grayscale's landmark win increases the likelihood that the agency might approve all Bitcoin spot ETF applications together. That was, I think, on day 1 after the order. On day 2, we've seen German bank Berenberg said it is quite possible SEC will prepare alternative arguments to justify continued rejections of these spot Bitcoin ETF applications. What would you say to a trader who is looking at these institutional expert organizations reviewing that order?
This is really, in my opinion, it's a political question. What does Chair Gensler want to do? You've had 2 commissioners who dissented in connection with the Grayscale denial at the SEC. So if Chair Gensler wants to continue to say the SEC is the enforcer of cryptocurrency, the SEC is going to make the rules on this, the SEC, he's going to find a way to put up more obstacles, to delay this. There's no doubt. So this is a political question. I think the fact that you see bigger, more traditional financial institutions coming into this space certainly helps the argument that we should treat all of them similarly. So I think the likelihood is it's all political, in my opinion. It's what Chair Gensler is going to decide at the end of the day. But I think we are seeing this crack, and I would say that it is more likely that the SEC starts approving these, maybe a few at a time, not all at a time, but maybe a few to the extent they are similar.
Sorry, Jen. I know we're completely out of time, but I have to push back against what you just said, because on the one hand, you're predicting that it's likely that he's going to, that they're going to slowly go ahead and approve these applications. But part of your answer was also that he's going to find a political way to block this. Yeah,
I think it depends on what Chair Gensler wants to do in the situation. If he wants to continue to stall, then there's going to be other issues that he presents, right? And he's going to block.
Got it. We're completely out of time. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Keith, thanks so much for joining the show this morning. And that is an adorable dog you have on that picture frame behind you.
Thank you.
That was Perkins Coie Partner and former SEC enforcement lawyer Keith Miller.